Okay. Let's see. No. All right, here we go. All right, so today what we're going to do is I'm going to focus on normalization, and I'm going to do it by addressing the problem in the homework, which is that's the vet clinic, right? Yes. You have dogs and cats and so forth. All right, let's do that. If you can, all right, let's give me the column names.
There are 11 total.
There are 11?
Yes.
Okay.
Person's pet name.
All right, so our column names are going to have pet name.
Next one's pet type.
Type.
Next one's breed.
Breed.
Next one's date of birth. Pet.
Date of birth.
Next one's the owner's last name.
I'm going to say OL name,
Okay.
just so in case you see that, you want to know what that is. Then
First name.
OF name.
Owner's phone number.
Owner's phone number.
Owner's email.
Owner's email.
Service.
Service?
Yes. Like ear infection, things of that nature.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to continue this down here. Service.
Date.
Date.
And charge.
Charge. Is that all of them?
Yes.
Okay. All right. What your normalization says that you want to identify candidate keys. All right. So we tend to think of candidate keys as pieces of data or information that point us to other pieces of information. So if I say this, 02871, and I tell you that's a zip code, that determines what city and state are. All right. In this case, it turns out to be Portsmouth, Rhode Island. No other city and state has that zip code. Okay? Actually, some zip codes, some cities have more than one zip code, depending on how big they are, but Portsmouth has one zip code. So if I know this information here, I can determine this information. So this is a candidate key for if I'm looking for information about cities and states. So if I have the zip code, it determines city and state. So when you hear the word determinant, I know they throw terminology at you and it confuses you, but just think of it this way. If I have this, it determines something else. So that's what they mean by a determinant. So if I have, let's start with the owner. Okay? The owner is a person. What piece of information can I use to determine who the owner is?
Either his phone number or his email.
Phone number or email. But I guess we can kind of pick one. Doesn't really matter, right? Want to pick phone number? Is that right?
Yeah, email. Let's try email.
Email? Okay. So we're going to make email is a determinant because if I have the email of a person, I can then determine who that person is because this will uniquely identify one person. So that means if I have the email, I know this information, and I know this information, and I know this information. Get that? All right. What about the pet? If I want to find, there could be, if I use pet name, and one of the pet's names is Fluffy, do I have a copyright on the name Fluffy and nobody else can name their pet Fluffy? So what do I need to do to identify the pet?
If I use email as primary, I will use the phone number to associate it to pet name.
I could do that. I could make phone number as a way of a candidate key for identifying the pet. Because chances are, unless you're really kind of a weird person, if you have 3 pets, they're all going to have 3 different names, right? You're going to have 4 dogs named Fido. So what I might want to do is, if I say the combination of a person and the pets that they have, those names should be unique for that person, shouldn't they?
Yes.
I have 3 pets. I have a golden retriever named Comet. I have a King Charles Spaniel mix named Bella, and I have a cat named Rosie. None of those names are duplicated, so if I use whatever I use to identify me, plus the name of the animal, that should be unique, right? Because if I use my email to uniquely identify me, that narrows it down. So I found me, but now I have three animals, so I got to figure out which animal I'm talking about. If I go by pet name, the combination of my email and the pet name is unique, isn't it? I can uniquely identify a pet. Okay? So I can then take this plus this, so I'm going to underline these so that you know that those, I'm going to use the combination of the owner's email and the pet name to uniquely identify my dog Comet. Do you see how that works? So remember I said, if I have 02871, it determines Portsmouth and Rhode Island as city and state. There is no other city and state 02871. If I have my email and the pet name Comet, that determines my golden retriever.
So the email and the pet name would determine the breed.
Right.
The type and breed.
It would determine the type, the breed, and the dog's date of birth. All the information about the dog that I have will be determined because I have that unique combination of my email and the pet name. So I have 3 pets. I have one that's named Comet. If I had 2 that were named Comet, then I have to figure out something else. One is named Comet. So the combination of my email and Comet gets me to that dog, who is he's a dog. So Comet is a dog. He's a golden retriever. His date of birth was 5/21. He's 4 years old, so 2012.
So I guess the part I was getting confused on is that if we use email for the original, let's say as the, like we said, as the primary, then if we use it on another table, it would become, it was supposed to be primary of that new table that you've taken it down to, and it makes the top table a foreign. So how could it be a foreign and a primary in the same table? I guess that's the question.
It's not. You're going to break these into different tables. That's the thing.
Right, so if you break that into a table, just email and pet name, that's a composite, right? So
Right.
would that type composite go be the primary, or would that be okay?
So let me see what your tables will look like.
Okay,
All right. So my pet table. So I'm going to have a pet table.
yes,
So I'm going to have owner's email. Okay.
yes,
Then I'm going to have the pet name,
yes,
type, breed, and date of birth. And it's going to look like this. John@yahoo.com.
So what would be your
Right.
primary on that table?
My primary key, it's 2 things.
Email and pet name, right?
Right. The combination of this and this. Okay? Because I might have John at Yahoo. My writing is getting bad on this .com. So this there's a duplicate value there, right? But if I put Rosie in here, the combination of my email and comment and my email and Rosie are different. Okay? And then I'll have dog, golden retriever, and date of birth, and I'd have cat, domestic short hair, and date of birth.
So that's that table. Now, if we look at the first table, which was the email, determines last name, first name, and phone number, what will be the primary of that one? Is it just email? So where's the lag?
All right, I'm trying to... I was trying to sort these sheets so I don't have to go over this one again.
Yeah.
All right, so that broke out the pets, right? Now, what if I want to break out the owner?
You've already done that.
Well, I want to create a table for the owner.
Right.
So what I'm going to do is for owners, all right, I got the owner's email, right? It's unique. Then owner's first name, owner's last name, phone number, anything else? You get the idea?
Yeah.
All the stuff that describes the owner. Anything that has a one-to-one relationship with the owner. Owner has one phone number. Owner has one first name. Owner has one last name. Owner has one email. One-to-one relationship. So that's the owner's table. Okay. Now,
What would be a primary in that? Would the email be the primary in that one?
yeah, we already said that was going to be the primary.
So,
We did that back here. Watch. See?
yeah, so email basically is the primary in two tables.
It's
Part of the second table.
it's a primary in the owner's table. It is part of a composite key in the pets table.
I see what you're saying. So then, I think that would make more sense now, because then if we wanted to do the service date and charge, we could actually bring down,
Yeah, so we have just service date and charge, and we're going to figure out how we're going to, this is probably the only thing we have left to break into another table. Now, if there's a service that the vet provides, who else is involved?
the owner,
The owner. He's going to pay,
dog.
and the dog or the cat or whatever animal is involved. So I'm going to need a way to uniquely identify the animal that is having the service done. So if the cat's getting shots, they need to know what cat. And how do I do that?
So you would need definitely the pet's name.
Okay. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to take the pet information. The way I uniquely identify a pet is a combination of owner's email and pet name, right? So I need to identify the pet. By doing that uniquely identifies me as the owner, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay? So, in my services table, I'm going to have the owner's email. I'm going to have the pet name. And now we have to look at how we're going to identify the service. So you might do it one of two ways. You might do it by date, or you might do it by the service name. But the thing is, if you do it by service name, so like if the cat gets shots, and I come back next year, cat's going to get shots again. So the combination of my email, the cat named Rosie, and the shots is going to repeat. So I can't do that. I can't make that part of the composite key, can I? So what I might do instead is I might use the date of the service. So if I look like service date. Or I might just create one. I might just create an auto number field called service ID. When you get into the service is here. This is kind of like a transaction table. When you get into this part of it, you have to make some decisions. and this is sort of like system analyst decisions. Am I going to limit on any particular date a particular animal to one service, then I can do this. But if I can take my cat in to get shots and then a flea dip and groomed in the same day, I can't do that because then I'll have my email, Rosie, and on the same date having 3 different things done. So that doesn't work. So then what you end up doing is you might create a service ID, which, oops, which, has 1 for the first, 2 for the second, 3, 4, just has an auto number field that's just going to create an ID number for you.
Is the ID number created for each service done, or is the ID created for each email that you're putting in together?
For each record in the table. So I think I would lean more towards this because now, when you're trying to figure out what determines what, owner's email, pet name, service date probably determines the service, right? But it's not a perfect system. And the charge, all right, so the money is right there. It definitely, if I have service, determines the charge, doesn't it? Charge doesn't determine service. So I do have a bit of a candidate key here, service determining the charge. The date doesn't determine the service because I can do anything.
But we got her to do the service ID, the owner's email, and the pet name as a deposit key.
No, just the service ID as a primary key. You're going to manufacture the first record's going to have a 1. You know the auto number fields in Access?
Yes.
The first row is going to have a 1 in it, the second one's going to have a 2 in it, because we're really not going to do lookup by this primary key here, and we don't want to limit the rest of the data. We want to be able to have as much accurate information as we can. I don't want to limit this owner and this pet to 1 procedure per day. I don't want to limit the owner and the pet to 1, service.
So I thought when we were doing these tables that if we got one table and we made another table, it had to include at least one of the columns from the previous table.
Okay.
So, because we got...
Here's 1. Here's 2.
Right, but I thought if we included them, that they had to become a primary on the new table. On the service table, we don't, neither one of them's a primary.
No, on the service table, we created one.
Right, so we don't, when we've been creating new tables,
Doesn't have to be.
we don't have to create the primary off of a previous table?
No, these are foreign keys. My email is going to show up a whole bunch of times in here because I'm going to bring Rosie in and Comet in and Bella in, and Comet's going to get neutered and Bella's going to get shots and all that stuff.
So we don't have to...
So my email will show up multiple times because I'm bringing in different animals. And I'm going to bring Rosie in for shots this year and next year and the year after that. So Rosie's going to come in this date, and he's going to come in the other date, and she's going to come in the other date. So her name's going to repeat. The service date, I might bring in all 3 animals on the same date. So that date is going to repeat. And the service, shots and flea dip and all that, those services are going to repeat, and therefore the charges are going to repeat.
And then we can break that again down into another table where you bring the service and the money down to another table.
Yeah, you could do that.
But if I did that, you said I don't have to have I don't have to bring them down the primary key. I don't have to make one of them primary, right? Service would actually be primary at that point in time, right?
Yeah. You have service and charge. You have 2 fields, and the service description. In doctors' offices, they have those medical codes. They have a medical code, then a description, and the charge for it. So that you could break that down into another table.
See, I was thinking that every table you have to have something that links it to another table. So because service and money does not link to the original table.
If I want to break this down further?
No, we don't have to. I'm just saying, I just always thought that when we did the table, that they had to have something that links them to the prior table, and it had to be like in a big circle, so you can always go from one table to any table at any point in time.
Right. No, that's not a big circle. You can still get there no matter.
But it's not have to be a circle, so this, like if you have 6 tables, table 2 doesn't have to be able to take you through 1 through 5.
Table 2 does not have to have a direct relationship to table 5 to get to table 5.
Okay, so 1 can have the relationship
As long as there's a pathway to it.
to 5, and 5 doesn't have to take it right back to 1, it has to take it back to 4 to 3, or the 3 to 5, and I can just go through that one like that. And that's my problem I was having,
Look-
trying to connect every single one of them.
No. You'll drive it. No, no. Can't, doesn't work that way.
Crazy.
Let's break it down. So let's break it down so we link me to how much money I owe, which is something, right? So we're going to break this down, and we're going to take that out. So I'm going to have service in here, and then I'm going to create another table. This one's easy. Services. I'm going to have the service name. Oops. That's going to be a primary key. And then I'm going to have the charge. So here's my primary key. That, when I have a service, that determines what the charge is. Good? So now I go back over here, and I have a service here, and this is a foreign key to this. That's a primary key.
Yeah, I get that part.
So now I want to find out, I go back to the owner's table, and there's my email. I want to know how much I owe for today. Well, it looks like this. If you do the topography on it, I have a table, owner, and then email, owner's email is my primary key, right? Then I have a pets table, and it's pet name and owner's email. Combination, okay? Owner's email connects over here. Then I have, what's next?
So pet name and owner's email both have to connect, right?
Yep.
So you have to connect the pet name and owner's email to the owner part, right? So they both have to be in the owner's table, right?
No, owner's email has to be, pet name does not.
So how do you let the system know that pet name is also something that needs to be, in order to make the composite key there, you have both of them, right?
Right.
So how do you let the system know that pets have to have both of them in order for?
You select both fields, and you hit the primary key field, primary key icon.
Okay, so you make both of them so-called primary.
That's primary key. But then this owner's email by itself is a foreign key.
Right.
Right? So then what did I have next? I had, what am I missing? Services.
And you would do the referential integrity thing with the pet as well on that one?
Yeah, let me do something here. I want to change this to not services, to appointments. That makes more sense. Appointments. All right? In each appointment, I'm going to have a service. So now I get over here. I'm going to have an appointment table. In there, I'm going to have the owner's email. Okay? I'm going to have the pet name. Pet name. I'm going to have an appointments ID, which is going to be my primary key. Now, the owner's email relates back over here. The pet name relates down here.
So yours too connect all together.
But it doesn't have to be a circle. And then you have the services one. I have a service in here. And I have a services table where I have a service and a charge. Now, I want to get from my owner to how much I owe. The owner's email goes I go through here, through appointments, then I pick up the service code, and I go over here, and it tells me how much I owe. Make sense? So I start here, I find out what appointment I had, and it's based on the date. And then once I find that record of that appointment, I have my email, the pet name, the service was provided, the date it happened, right? I look at the service code, and then I look it up over here, and it gives me the charge that I owe. This doesn't have to be a circle. Doesn't have to be a circle. In fact, it's kind of rare that it is a circle. Usually what you end up with is something that looks like this. This is usually a transaction table, like appointments, sales transactions, registration for courses, all that stuff. That's sort of the center of it. And you have, if this is a sales table, I have employees over here selling inventory to customers. If it's an appointments table, I have patients over here making appointments to see doctors, and those doctors are going to perform services.
So the way I had set mine up was basically owners. I had a table for owners, basically. What I did was I did owner, last name, first name, owner phone number, and email. Then I had one that came down and I did owner email, pet name, pet breed, and date of birth. So it gave me information about the pet.
Okay.
And then I came down and I did pet type and pet breed, which gave me what type of breed it is, what type of pet it is.
Yep.
But that doesn't really make sense because at the end of the day is that doesn't link up back to the owner on there.
Sure it does. You put the owner's email in there.
And then the last one that I was trying to do was I was doing service date, service charge, and the service itself. Now I relate that back to pet name and pet date of birth together.
All right. The services under like appointments, that kind of thing.
So I was creating tables. So basically the table I created was in order for you to get the service, the date, and the charge of the dog, of the service itself, you would relay that back to a composite, pet name and pet date of birth. So unless there was two pets that had the same name and same date of birth, that should basically be a composite key for the service date and charge.
Well,
Unless it had, like you said, we have more than one service that day.
yeah,
And the pet name, date of birth, still.
it's going to duplicate itself. So you have your appointments, and then that's why I say create this artificial primary key over here, which is just an auto number field. Then, because you don't really need, you're more likely going to look up appointments by date or by customer or by pet name. You're going to search for them that way. You're not going to search for them based on this service ID number, but it does give you a primary key so that it allows you to fulfill that requirement. You might search on the owner. I want to find out what date he came in for his last appointment. So I could give me all the appointments for this one owner. You find out last Thursday was the last time he was in. Okay? So that's that, and you do that by looking at a series of records. There's going to be a whole bunch of them. Or what's the medical history? This is a normal thing. If you move, you want your pet's medical records, they're going to go in there, give me all the records that mention this pet and this owner. And it's going to give you the basic medical history of that animal. So those both pet name and owner name will repeat.
So the owner email and the pet name, we can use them as primary keys to that, though, right? So why create another automatic?
No, this is not the primary key.
But why could it not be?
Because I'm gonna bring in Rosie for shots this year, and I'm gonna bring in Rosie for shots next year. So then I'll show the combination of me and Rosie will show up this year, and it'll show up again next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. It will repeat, and by definition, a primary key value cannot repeat.
Yeah, just so if they get 4 services in one day, they'll have 4 different service numbers.
That just These are just a number that puts the record number in there, just,
So we have 4 records for that pet at that point, right?
well, that 4 records for everybody. We'd have more than, eventually we'd have, hundreds.
Right, because every time they come in, they're gonna get a new record.
Yeah, you bring your dog in, I bring my dog in, you bring your cat in, I bring my cat in, Joe down the street brings his dog in, somebody brings an iguana in, whatever it is, and then those transactions get recorded in the appointments table.
See, that's the issue with, like, I thought that the one I did was gonna be enough to create a unique table by me putting the 2 there by itself. Wrong. And that's the thing, like, trying to figure out when to create a AID and when to use the columns to create a composite or a home dictionary is the part that's kind of.
And that takes, once you get a little more experience, it'll become more natural. But whenever you, excuse me, whenever you have a situation where I'm going to have a combination of this, and this, and pretty soon you've got every field in there. That's just, if it takes all the fields in the table to come up with a unique table, a unique record in the table, that's not good. That's just too much. So what you do is you create one that gives you your primary key. Then you do your lookup on your owner, and you do your lookup on your pet. You want to find out how many appointments do we have next Thursday? You do a lookup on service date. You know what I'm saying? And that will get you. So now when we had the owner's email was, the owner's email, and this will go through the terms they're using there. The owner's email determines the owner's first name, the owner's last name, and the owner's phone number.
Right, that one's pretty simple, that's just right there.
Okay. The owner's email and the pet name combined, John and Rosie, or John and Comet, determine that Comet is a dog, he's a golden retriever, and he was born whenever he was born. When I have the combination of John and Rosie, that determines that Rosie is a cat, is a domestic short hair, and was born whenever. These 2 fields in combination determine what the values are going to be for these rest of these fields. So these they start off as candidate keys. In this case, the combination or the composite of the 2 fields, whatever's in here, determines the rest of this.
So they're actually candidate keys from the beginning.
Yeah, these are candidate, because I took that big long table,
Right.
which is all these fields, and what I did was I looked at what things were related. I have a pet name. All right, so I'm talking about a pet. So which of these fields relates to the pet? Well, this is the type, the breed, and the date of birth. That all relates to, there's a one-to-one relationship between my dog Comet and the fact that he's a dog. He's only one dog. He's one breed. He's a golden retriever, and he has one birthday. So there's a one-to-one relationship with all of these pieces of information. Then same way with my email determines my phone number, my first name, and last name. The service that I provide determines the charge, doesn't determine the date. So I create another table called appointments that my email and the pet name and the service and the date determines. So you see how takes that whole thing to be unique? So I create a separate one. But if I have a dog name, I can determine if that dog has had his rabies shots by going into that's the pets. Excuse me. By looking at the appointments table, I can look up the pet name Comet, and I can determine if there is a record in there that says Comet in that field and rabies shots in this field. And then I can say, oh, what was the date in which Comet had his last rabies shot? But this is a real world thing. This is how they do it. So I go into the doctor, I said, I said, when does he due for his shots? And they look it up, and they just find out when was the last time he was in for his shots. Look up the dog's name, my owner email, the dog's name, and then they look and they find when he has shots. They give you the date. Real world stuff. Real world stuff. How are we doing? Better?
Getting there. Getting there. It's a little bit confusing about when to name something a deposit, when to name it a primary, when to combine it as a deposit, when to just take one, when to create your own ID instead of using email there.
And that takes a little bit of getting used to, but you ask yourself a question, if I use this field as a primary key, is there going to become a need for me to repeat that value? So is in the appointments table, is there ever going to be a need for my email address to repeat? Yeah, because I got 3 animals. So I'm going to bring the Comet in, I'm going to bring Rosie in, I'm going to bring Bella in. So my email is going to show up in all 3 records. Then I'm going to come back next year and do it all over again. So it's 3 more records. So my email address will repeat in that table. So I can't use that as a primary key. What about the combination of my email and the dog?
So I can bring that down as a field and then have to create something else as a primary key.
Right. In this case, what you're saying here is, when we get to, here's my appointments. My appointments, I'm just using my email address so that I can go back and look up who I am as a person. So in my appointments, I'm using my email address so I can go back over here and find out all the other information about me. What's my first name, last name, what's my phone number, and so on. So I don't have to store all that information in the appointments table. I use my email address to look it up. Because I have the email address and it determines my first name, last name, and phone number.
Yes,
Get
that's
it?
the point. So, but you also said we do not have to use one of the columns out of another previous table to get back to the point. I could just have a table basically. For instance, if I got 2 prior tables and I got email and pet's name on the second one. First one's email, got that table. Second table has pet's name. I can use the third table, and that one does not have to have pet's name for second. It can actually have email from the first. Is that correct? So, table 1 has email.
Yep.
Table 2 has pet's name. My third table, let's say it's something I want about the servicing of the servants of the pets, like that, something like that. I could actually have here the email here inside the servicing. So
Right.
It does not link back to that one. It can link directly to this one.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. Then that makes me go up a little bit.
Good. All right. Yeah. Good. Yeah. And I was going to say is, here's how this works. This is understanding database concepts, right? Understanding what a relationship is, and this is time. It takes a little time. When you start doing this, you're here, and you're kind of creeping along. You don't understand much, and time is going by. So, and you creep along. All of a sudden, you hit a point where it's like, oh, I got it, and then off you go. Once you get the idea why you have 2 tables that relate to each other, 2 tables could be 100 tables, just as easy. And you get a sense for picking fields and data that should be unique and that should be foreign keys, that should be primary keys. And you get comfortable with it, you just take off.
So I gotta get it out of my head that if I got 10 tables, table 10 that I create has to link up to table 9.
Or no, it
link up to table 2.
It does not have to link up like. Doesn't have to link up like that, and neither does it have to link up like every possible combination. No.
I got a table out here just that basically links up only to one table and everything
Right.
over here.
As long as it looks something like this, this one connects to this one, this connects here, this connects here, that connects there. It's more like a spider web. As long as, if I had a table out here like this, not connected to anything, that will draw my attention because that's useless. It doesn't interact with the rest of it. So why have it? Just a list. So anyway, all right. Are we good for today?
Just one more question.
Okay.
Just a quick question, actually. They don't really touch on it too much for multi-dimensional. It's called multi-dimensional. For your multi-dimensionals, and it's a question about it, but the way they do it is basically they tell you that there's a new field, and then the field is actually basically linked to other fields, basically what it seems as if. Like they give you a person's name, and then it says siblings, and then it says a person's name, and then it says diplomas, and then it says this is multi-dimensional value.
Oh, a multi-value field?
Yeah, and then they leave
Yeah.
it at that.
Yeah. What you're doing is this. It's the same thing as we had here with pets. It's the same thing. Siblings, where is it? Owners. Pets. All right? You have a student and the sibling, right? So the combination of that's how you uniquely identify that student, and the sibling's name is unique. Because you got brothers and sisters?
Yes.
Anybody have the same name?
No.
Of course not. Unless you're George Foreman. He named all his boys George for some reason. But, the combination of your student ID and your brother Bill is unique. Right? So if you have a siblings table, it would have your student ID and his first name.
Okay, I think I just got you were wrong on that one. So basically, you're using two different fields. It's like a composite primary, almost like, right? You're
Yes.
using two different fields to identify something uniquely.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll get that part, because now I see it says child, BBS, child, sibling, child, parts, bike repair, tube fix. Okay, so just like in the store, you got something in this section that says bike repair and it has multi different things that it has to deal with. And each one of those things, if it combines it with each one of them, they will be uniquely if they combine. So you got bike repair, you got 100 different types of bike repair. But if I go and combine myself with either one of them directly, it's going to be a unique.
Yeah, the combination of you and that.
Right, it could be bike repair in part 1, bike repair in part 99. Either one of them compared together is going to be a unique relation, basically.
Could be, yeah.
Okay? And that's the entire definition of multi, whatever it's called.
The multi-value fields is the one thing you want to avoid. That's what they're trying to get you out of. That's when you have, if I had a table that just had my email address once and then my 3 animals listed after that, that we don't want to worry about
So you
that.
want to break each one of them down to their own table.
Yeah, and don't try not to get hung up on the terminology because it'll confuse you.
Okay.
Just worry about how it works. Worry about, hey, could I sit down and break open Access and could I put this into Access? Do I understand enough about how this thing is laid out to be able to do that? And we'll go through the process. And the process looks like this. You're starting off with one table. Turns out we turned one table into 4 tables, didn't we?
Yeah.
And we even created a new one. So that's going from here to the end product and getting, and you notice we did not use Access at all to do this, did we? So much easier to use a whiteboard or a piece of paper or a chalkboard to draw it out because it's easy to erase a line on this thing. It's not easy to pull apart a database and get it back together.
That's when I was having problems. I had created a database, and I was trying to break it in half, and I was trying to figure out, you gotta go create a new table, but how am I gonna take all that off there and put it over here, and it was just like.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. I read
So you got to define it and you're going to design it that way. So you when you're in your design phases, you do this. You break, there's a table, there's a table, there's a table, right? And you draw it out. All right, now that I've got this, I'll put this into Access. I'm comfortable with it because my thing looks like this. Now I'm feeling comfortable. Now I can create my owners table. Now I can create my pets table. Now I can create my appointments and my services table.
Do we have to write down each individual email just use the column titles like that.
That's fine. Column titles is fine.
Those type of items like that.
Yeah, you can do it either way. If you want to put in the data, you can. But we're still talking about database design. This is a design exercise.
Okay.
Normalization. We're normalizing the data.
I feel a little bit better about it now. I'm gonna go and definitely, I was gonna basically let go and be free about it and just, I think like the title should be inside of a certain table, I'll put it in there. I was just so focused on every point has to be right, like it has to be a circle and everything has to connect to some kind of way and you gotta use every single thing. You want us to put like key on your homework for like primaries and stuff, or you're gonna see the two and you'll notice it, or what?
Let me know what the primary key is for each table.
Okay.
If it's a composite key, let me know. If you have to create your own key, let me know.
All right, so I can just put P on both of them. If you see two of them, you know it's composite. If I put this one, then put it in there, put it in red, you know it. Okay, no problem.
Works fine.